Welcome to the Drake Shake, a polar podcast hosted by seasoned Antarctica expedition guide Neil Drake. With over 10 seasons guiding and 1,000 days spent on the ice, Neil will be joined by fellow guides and industry experts to share their years of experience and knowledge to help you make the most informed decision when planning your once-in-a-lifetime adventure. From picking the right itinerary to deciding when to go, we will cover it all. The Drake Shake is brought to you by Antarctica Travel Group and Let'sGoPolar.com. Now, here's your host, Neil Drake, with this week's episode.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of the Drake Shake podcast. My name is Neil Drake, and I'll be your host. And as always, I am joined with a very lovely, very quarantined, still in her enclosure. Nikki is here with us today. Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've been referring to myself as a quarantine queen, which is helping me quite a bit.
If you tuned into the last episode, you heard a little bit about Nikki's time in quarantine, but we also have our special guest today. His name is Joshua Peck. Joshua, how are you? You're also in quarantine, and we'll get to why you're also in quarantine in a minute, but how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Neil. Yeah, Quarn King. I don't know.
Quarantine
King. Yeah, I don't know.
Joshua, you were actually a guide on Nikki's trip.
Yeah. One of the expedition guides, historian, naturalist on board.
You know, Josh, there is a bit of a anomaly here because you are the first guest on the show that I have never worked with and never met in person. So far, everybody's been kind of in my posse, in my entourage. You're the first outlier, but. Yeah, Nikki and I were talking about it, and she said, this guy, Josh, his expedition guide would be an excellent guest on the show. And what's funny is that you show up on my Facebook every single day as like a suggested friend because we've all worked with the same people. So I think we have like 30 mutual friends in common on social media because we've worked on the same ships. Yeah, you were working on the Hondius, and I had worked on it before. So one of these days we may cross paths.
Yeah, I imagine so. So it's a small world.
And I'm surprised I haven't run into you in the Falklands, and that's why you're actually on this episode today. We're going to talk about South Georgia and the Falklands and when is the best time to visit. But you yourself, you're a Kelper, aren't you?
Yeah, born and bred in the Falklands. Living in England now, but yeah, originally from there.
When did you leave the Falklands?
I left about 5 years ago. My partner she was at university here in England, but she now works full time. She's a doctor, so we moved over for her to study. But before that, I was living in the Falklands, running my own tour business, actually.
Right on. So you know Georgina. I've worked with her in the past. I see Georgina all the time.
Yeah. No, Georgina.
She's good. She's Georgina. I love her to death. She's a good one. And my other favorite, and if you're listening to this episode, you're most likely listening because you're going to visit South Georgia, the Falklands. One of the stops that everybody must make is you got to stop by Richard's spot, Richard's Ginnery.
Yeah. I got a few bottles downstairs, actually.
As do I.
They might be coming out during quarantine. Yeah.
I potentially risked my global entry because I brought back I hypothetically, how do I not confess to it?
I cannot confirm or deny that I did this thing.
I just may or not have brought a significant amount of gin back every single time I come home from a season. So, but they have that Kelper gin because they have the Darwin, which is delicious. But then he started making the Kelper gin, and I love the Kelper.
That's our favorite in the house. That one. We've actually run out of that one. We're back to the kind of original Darwins, but we've got a few emergency bottles in supply.
If you've listened to the show before, which I understand you haven't listened to the show yet, I like to begin every show with a little bit of a cold opener. You get it?
Okay.
Cold opener.
Yeah.
Cold, because polar.
I get it.
Tell us a little bit about what it means to be a Kelper. What's the term come from, and what does it mean? Because I said you're a Kelper, and there's a gin called the Kelper, but there's a meaning behind that.
I don't know the exact origins of it, but yeah, the Falklands is famous for its kind of coastal ecosystems and huge kelp fields and kelp beds. Yeah, and was used for the kind of original settlers that came there in the 1800s. So it's used. It's not used very much locally. I wouldn't say so much. A little bit, but yeah, we know what you're talking about when we say it. And obviously, yeah, it's on the gin, and you see it in other places.
It just means that you were born and raised in the Falklands, right? It just means that you're a native, you're a local.
Yeah.
You wouldn't call a transplant in the Falklands a Kelper.
No, well, I tell you, I don't know how long it takes to become, until you can get that Kelper stamp in your passport. I don't know. But Yeah. I mean, we all kind of originated from somewhere. Some of us long time ago, some of us more recently. But
So we're excited to have you because we're going to talk a little bit about, or a lot of bit about, when is the best time to visit South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. And we did an episode that was actually our very first episode we ever did on this podcast, was when to visit Antarctica. But I think that South Georgia deserves its own episode because it's just like Antarctica. True or false? There is a best time to go to South Georgia.
I'd say it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, I think you should go anytime. If you get the chance to go, you go anytime because it's one of the most special places. But it depends what you want to see. But
thank you. Yeah. So there is no best time. It's just that's sort of the theme of our show. It's apparent you haven't listened, because the theme of our show is that there's no best time for anything. There's no best time to book. There's no best time to go. There's no best company. Every single thing in this industry is flexible. Everything is this is the term that you've heard in expedition forever. It depends. Right? What are you most interested in seeing? And the goal of this episode is to not give somebody a time to go. We're not going to say, this is the best time to visit South Georgia. We're going to say, if you're interested in this, maybe come during this time. If you're interested in that, maybe go during this time of year, and just kind of break it down. And then you just kind of got to weigh out, because there's not a significant amount of overlap between the ideal time to go to Antarctica versus the ideal time to go to South Georgia. And an example of that I'll say is, if you're really interested in seeing penguin chicks in Antarctica, you can't do the early season in South Georgia, but the early part of South Georgia, and we'll start hopping right into it, is incredible for one particular reason, which is, what's the best part about going October and early November? There's one thing you can see there you can't see the rest of the year. And those are our
elephant seals.
That's it.
King
That's
penguins?
The one. Yeah.
Okay.
Gold star for
You're
Josh.
making me nervous. Yeah.
Gold star for Josh. And we're not going to go too deep in it about it right now, but I just want to make sure that people understand, again, that there is no best time to go. You're going to have to kind of decide what's most important to you, because if you want to see baby penguin chicks and you want to see the elephant seals, the big bull elephant seals on the beach fighting, you can't go and see both at the same time. So let's break it down a little bit about what each part of the year offers in South Georgia that makes it a little bit different. You cool with that?
Yeah, definitely.
And one more quick question. Do you have a favorite penguin? If I made you nervous before, this better get you all riled up. So do you have a favorite penguin?
Rockhopper.
Rockhopper's a good...
Southern rockhoppers, as they're known.
Yeah, well, you guys got West Point, so I don't blame you. Our second episode, we had Jeff Nagel on the show, and he said that anybody who tells you that the king penguin isn't their favorite penguin is lying to you. And so far, everybody has said penguins other than the king penguin. So.
We haven't gotten king one time.
Yeah. So for me, it's the Adele, and Nikki's got her favorite. No, rockhoppers are great, and I think West Point really is the highlight of an entire itinerary on a 19-day trip. I really do. I think it is kind of hopping right into sort of chronologically the different periods of South Georgia. When do we usually see trips really starting to go? What would be the earliest trip that we see in South Georgia?
Well, the earliest ones I've seen in the last couple of seasons have been right at the end of September, so really early.
Oh, wow. Even earlier.
Yeah, some really early trips in the last couple of years, but the earliest I've ever done trips there is in October.
Right. Like mid-October, usually like October 10th or something. I actually did that trip with Oceanwide, which was, I think we left October 20th, and we did Falklands and South Georgia first, and then we went to Antarctica afterwards. And I loved it. It was, to this day, still one of my absolute favorite trips. And then I did a trip with Poseidon in October. That was South Georgia only, and that was also like an October 15th departure. Yeah, it's really, what are we after when we're going in the early parts of the season in South Georgia? Give us a little bit of paint us a picture of what we can kind of expect that time of year.
I mean, the weather is changeable. I mean, it's changeable any time of the year, but it's nice early season because there's still usually a bit of snow around, or more chances of snow around, which is nice for landscape wise. But the wildlife is incredible that time of year. The king penguin colonies are kind of at their fullest. The chicks are, chicks have almost fledged, some of the king chicks. Obviously, you don't have the Gen 2s, and The macaronis haven't really come back early season, October, but you have beaches that are full of king penguins and elephant seals breeding. And the elephant seals breeding in October is pretty special.
I really think that they're the highlight of the show that time of year.
Yeah.
People come for the penguins. They say it all the time. They come for the penguins, but they stay for the elephant seals.
Yeah, I mean the big bulls when they're fighting on the beach fronts and some of those kind of beaches, the big beaches, St. Andrews and Gold Harbor and some of those other beaches, they're just packed with action, which pretty amazing. Even if you're not on shore and you're just in a Zodiac or something, then it's pretty incredible.
And I mean, is there really anything cuter than a wiener?
Yeah, there's not many things cuter.
So I knew Nikki was going to get a chuckle out of it. Yeah, wieners. Baby elephant seals are called wieners because they've weaned off their mothers. I mean, it could go both ways, but yes, wieners, I think they got those big, gigantic, round black eyes that stare at you like they're from another earth. And they're playing with our flags. They're playing with the safety gear on the shores. They want to interact with you, but you can't. They're the most adorable thing. I really love early South Georgia to the point where I personally, we talk about our favorite times to go. I think it's worth giving up penguin chicks in Antarctica to be in South Georgia during the early part of the season. I think that if I had to weigh one over the other, I would rather be in South Georgia early and not be able to see penguin chicks. Also because we can see penguin chicks in South Georgia, the king penguin chicks all year round.
Yeah. I kind of agree as well. I mean, some of those longer trips, those kind of 19, 21 day trips, they kind of start a little bit later in October sometimes, don't they? You still get that opportunity once you get south that at least some penguins are coming back, but obviously you haven't got the chicks, but at least you can get in and see Adelies and chin straps and gentoos coming back.
Let's talk about right up until when we can really still see these big bull male elephant seals jousting on the beach, because that's the highlight, right? There's always going to be some young adolescents. There's going to be some smaller females left around. There's always going to be some wieners hanging around in Grytviken and in Gold Harbor and places like that. But the bulk of them, it's like right to the day, like November 15th, 16th. That's usually right when it's over. Second week in November, I'd say is that pretty accurate? Is about the last time you get to see it?
Yeah. You might get a few kind of sub-adult males fighting on the beach, but early into November, mid-November, the beaches become a lot quieter.
If you're looking at a trip that's going to be in South Georgia, anywhere from like late November on till the rest of the year, you're going to be seeing a lot less elephant seals, and you're going to be seeing the wieners hanging around, but the main action is pretty much over by then. Another big advantage too, I think, to early parts of the season is a lot of the landing sites are still a bit more accessible versus later in the season. We can kind of circle back on that when we talk about the later parts of the season. When you get to a place like St. Andrews Bay and that river that's running right through St. Andrews Bay that kind of splits the landing site in half, it toward the end of the year, it becomes a lot less accessible to get to that overlook that kind of oversees the entire colony, because the snow melt has now created this large river that runs to the landing site. Where in the early parts of the season, it's a little more accessible. And St. Andrews is the only place that I can think of that's like that.
Yeah, in terms of access, I would say, it's actually strange that St. Andrews Bay has changed so much even since I started working there. Actually, when Nikki and I landed there in early April, we were actually end of the season, no snow around. It was hot. I think it was a warm day the day we were there, and you could actually get across the bottom of the river, which was amazing. It changes so much season on season, but usually you can't get across. The meltwater's too high sometimes, and if there's big swell on the beach, it's impossible to get ashore. So, but we were lucky when we.
Nikki, you've been to South Georgia twice. Let's talk a little bit with Nikki, because I feel like she's been really quiet, just listening and taking this all in. You've been in South Georgia twice. When did you go?
So the first trip that I went on, I was there at the end of December, and then the other trip that I just did was early April. About mid-season and end of season.
Did you see a big difference between the two times that you were there?
The landscapes were more interesting to me this time, and I don't know if that's because the first time I went, I was so focused on the penguins that I didn't notice the landscapes, or because they were actually different. It's really hard for me to say which it is. Definitely less baby penguins, but besides that, it was, I don't know, it was so magical both times, but for different reasons.
I will say that once you slide into December, it does get a little less different throughout the rest of the year. The main difference that you would have noticed versus we're talking about this in November, and we'll talk about this towards your later trip. The sunrises and the sunsets are much nicer and more pronounced in South Georgia during the early season versus the late part of the season compared to how it is in the middle of the season. And I would say, actually, we did the very first trip that we did, Josh, on the Hondius. I'll never forget. It was my favorite landing in South Georgia. We had bad weather scheduled for the rest of the day, and Trolls. I don't know if you got to work with Trolls, but Trolls was the EL at the time, and he did like a 5 a.m. landing in Gold Harbor. Sun was coming up over the backside, and it was just. Oh. He's like, we're going to go out now. We're going to get it out of the way before the weather kicks up. Like ABs, crane operators, the whole ship was up to get this done. Interesting enough, you can really only pull this operation off with like Oceanwide and another other company because you guys staff deck crew, where a lot of companies use outside companies. So Oceanwide definitely favors this adventurous sort of approach to things. But yeah, the sunrise and the sunsets in that part of the year are really spectacular. And you get to be, sometimes you can even be on shore during a sunset, right? At the end of a sunset when you go early October or late April, like when you guys went.
I did notice because when I went in December, it was basically 24 hours of sunlight. So there was no sunrises and sunsets, but we were able to be at San Andrews Bay as the sun was setting, and it was one of the prettiest sunsets I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, that's the perks of going early and late season. You can actually be up and alive at those times. I've had the honor of landing at Gold Harbor at 3 a.m. in the pitch black before to do sunrise landings. And I mean, it's nice, but they're long days when you're getting up later in the year, you know. So it's nice when the sunrise is at 7.
so who's looking at these early trips? And it's just, I would say, wildlife enthusiasts, wildlife photographers, even landscape photographers, right? If you're really into photography and you know you're going to be doing a South Georgia itinerary, I would, as a photographer, heavily lean towards going on an early trip for the light, for the landscapes, for the dustings that you get in the backgrounds, for the accessibility of the landing sites, and especially for those male elephant seals. Like, I have a huge photo out in my hallway of male elephant seals jousting, and it's just my favorite photo in my house because it's such a unique opportunity to see, and I would really lean towards that. That would be my thing. Even if you're not getting baby penguins in Antarctica that time of year, you get so much wildlife and so many more photo opportunities. That would be my suggestion. I mean, you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think that time of year as well, you get things like the light-mantled albatross coming in and starting to build nests and courting and stuff. And sometimes you just don't see them late season. We didn't see hardly any in April, just on that trip we just did. But in early season, all the birds are pretty active, you know, calling and flying overhead. So if you're getting there in November, October, then you do get a lot more kind of action overhead as well, which is pretty special.
How did the Falklands differ this time of year? This is your bread and butter. So do you see a major difference this time of year?
Yeah, I think in the Falklands, these days the weather is far less predictable than I suppose it used to be. But October and November can be quite windy and quite wet kind of months sometimes in the Falklands, early spring, kind of summer. But you get all the penguins coming back. In October, you get the gentoos and the rockhoppers and things coming back, and the albatross, the black grouse are starting to build nests at that kind of time. So it's pretty nice at home as well. Just sometimes the weather is a little bit more changeable at that time of year. This is
going to sound so silly. One of the other major benefits to being this early in the year, all the gift shops are well stocked. Because because people, I don't think people realize there's a gift shop in South Georgia in Grytviken. There's heaps of shops and stuff all through Stanley and the Falkland Islands. And if you go late part of the season, a lot of the good stuff has already been swooped up for the season. And I mean, I've been there toward the end of the season and they're just out of fish and chips over at the Globe because they've sold out for the season because they've got a quota. So early parts of the season, you can still get a proper fish and chips and a cider over at the Globe. Yeah. And the beanies, the Grit Vic and beanies, those are usually gone by January. So
I was so excited to get one of those when we were in Grit Vic, and like it was a goal. I was so jazzed about it, and it was sold out. And I was genuinely so bummed about it.
It sounds so silly. It sounds so silly. I was going to wear my
South Georgia hat for this, but I thought that might be rubbing salt into the wound as well.
No,
because they didn't have any of those either.
I've got you want to collect them all, right? The Nyalison one is the hardest one to get. So other part, and we'll leave off on the early part of the season with this, is that you're going to get trips a little bit cheaper. It's still considered a shoulder season. And as we mentioned in the When to Visit Antarctica episode, the shoulder seasons in this industry are not based off of when is the best or worst time to go. It's based off of sort of demand due to people's availability and when people have time off, resetting. So that's why our high season is like January, February. It's not that January, February are better times to go that make it the high season. It's just when people are more available to travel. So for me, I would say almost October, November in South Georgia are actually the high season of when to visit South Georgia for its benefits. And you're going to still find better deals then. And I think it's more availability of trips as well, because a lot of times these are repositioning trips. So companies are leaving from Port of Madryn to do South Georgia. There's a lot of benefits to it. Now, when we slide, before we move on, do you have anything else that you want to add about that October, November time of year?
No, I think you covered it all. Although, yeah, you're right that sometimes trips are a lot quieter. I've had trips on ships where we've had 30 or 40 guests, which obviously in terms of the company is not great for overheads, but in terms of the experience for guides and guests, and they're pretty special. But of course, companies aren't doing this so much because they can't operate like that. But it is a great time. It is a great time.
I don't know if you're paying attention, Josh, but a lot of companies, Oceanwide, who you work with, that's why we keep bringing it up. They're almost sold out for almost a lot of their voyages this season. A lot of companies are. A lot of companies are selling way beyond what they ever had in previous seasons. This far forward, this early in the year. But also, you did remind me of a good point. It's a little less busy. So you've got a lot more opportunities for different landing sites. You can go to a few more places that maybe are very highly sought after. The big three, St. Andrews, Salisbury, and Cold Harbor. And then I'm a huge fan of visiting Right Whale Bay. You got Hercules Bay. And you mentioned something about the macaronis. The macaronis, they show up like to the day, like November 7th or something like that. It's they're right on time. So you might miss some macaronis. You might catch some stragglers. Things are really changing because the food sources, the climate, temperatures, we're going into a big El Nino year right now. So there's a lot of things that could be affected by that. So yeah, I would say that in terms of differences, the early part of the season definitely stands out as being more varied than the rest of the year, because as we sort of was talking about with Nikki, once you get into like December, January, February, I think it sort of levels out. Antarctica has a lot more going on during those times of year and a lot more changing in the environments and in the wildlife, where I think in South Georgia, it stays pretty consistent through December, January, February, except for like one major difference, which we'll talk about. But do you see anything that really stands out December, January, February?
Yeah, not major changes. Once the elephant seals go and the king penguins kind of chicks fledge, then yeah, it becomes more stable. Of course, we're going to talk about the furries in a minute.
Yeah, I got a fur seal story for you, but that's exactly what I was referring to, the fur seals.
Yeah. So. But early, I was very lucky that I got to live in South Georgia for a season, and I was there from those months that you mentioned, from November to March. But yeah, it's kind of pretty stable. You get to see the things kind of beginning to change as you get into later in the season.
It starts to open up a little bit in terms of the foliage. It starts to green up a little bit more. It becomes very like Jurassic Parky. I kind of tell people, not the big giant trees, but It's very lush. The
Or the
tussock grass is
dinosaurs.
incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, giant petrels are dinosaurs. And if you
That's valid.
don't believe that
Yeah.
dinosaurs turned into birds, just look at a giant petrel. That's all you need to look at to say, yes, they're pterodactyls. And then you get the 24-hour sun, right? You get, I think also things start opening up, like you start to get your tea and with Kiki and them over in West Point. And they're usually all caught up by then, and it starts to stabilize. But you did mention the furries. Let's talk a little bit about these demons with flippers.
Demons.
When
Whoa.
do we? No, they're cool. When does it start getting pretty bad? Let's talk about it, and let's give people a little bit of a background what we're referring to.
Well, yeah, fur seals. Yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, we should count ourselves lucky that we can see so many of them now, because they were nearly extinct. Hunted nearly to extinction. They reckon there was only 600 left in the early 1800s. So they've made a pretty good rebound, maybe up to something like 4 million. So
you'll see
a decent number.
You'll see 600 of them on one beach now. Like more than that, to the point where it's too many now. So when do we start really seeing them? When do these big bull males come back? We start seeing them.
Yeah, end of October, early November. But the big mass of them's really coming in kind of mid-November onwards. But you might get the first kind of early bachelors coming back to the beach in early November, kind of staking their claim on the beach.
And they're really not problematic through November. It's really not until I'd say like mid-December when they're just becoming problematic.
When all the ladies
problematic is the wrong word, because we are in their home, we're on their turf. But the biggest issue with these fur seals is that these super testosterone charged males that are really looking to take over the beach and be the king of their harems, it's a bit of a problem, to the point that their numbers have gotten so large that we're used to seeing more and more frequently landings canceled because there's just too many fur seals on the beach.
Yeah, well, when the fur seal males come back and set up kind of shop on the beach, they have these little zones of territory. They're kind of within lunging distance of each other, these big male fur seals, and they don't move for anything. So you basically have a beach full of fur seals that are like bollards. They're like little kind of stones that you've got to navigate between to try and get to, whatever's behind the beach, or, to the penguins, or to get people ashore, to get guests ashore. But it's impossible. If there's too many fur seals, it's too dangerous. You just end up, they don't back down. They don't run. They're not like sea lions and fur seals that sometimes you encounter elsewhere in the world. These ones don't move. They're not scared at all of people. So, and you just can't get on the beach. It's not safe. So you don't want to risk, people being munched on by a big fur seal.
The word demon is very appropriate. So,
it's valid.
The demons with flippers. And we also have to respect our distances, right? We have to stay 5 meters away from wildlife. And in South Georgia, it's extremely difficult. And there is a bit of a flexibility there, as long as it's done sensitively. But there is that, and that really relates to the females and to the elephant seals, right? Because they're not really bothered by us very much. But the fur seals, you want to give them 10 meters if you can, because they're like Josh is saying, they're not scared of anything. And I have a funny story about Salisbury Plains. My wife is not an expedition guide, but when I was working with Albatross, you could have an expedition guide as like assistants, we called them. And basically they were for spouses, for partners and close family members. And they would get a heavily discounted trip. If you wanted to bring somebody that you were close to with you, they could come on board. You would share a cabin with them. They get a heavily discounted rate, and they would work with the expedition team as sort of an assistant and just helping out where they can, getting boots all organized and life jackets and stuff like that. And I brought my wife out with me to Salisbury Plains this time of year, right around December. And it was so heavily densely populated with fur seals that we had to do guided trips. Not every landing is guided, but sometimes when there's heavy densities of wildlife, the guides will walk you through in groups of 10. They'll take you out to the viewpoint where the colonies are. And that's just how we can most respectfully and responsibly navigate through wildlife. It's not always the case, but it happens from time to time. This just happened to be one of those times. And my wife and I were walking this group of 10 people to the end of Salisbury Plain where the overlook is. And we were going through all these fur seals. And when the viewing sites were over, we had to walk the guests back. And there was like a little bit of a pause. And I just said to my wife, I was like, hey, I'll be back in like 10 minutes. Just hang out here in case anybody else comes. And I just happened to be the first guide coming back with a group. And there's my wife like holding a walking stick like a javelin because there's 3 bull male elephant seals like trying to attack her. She was all by herself and she didn't know what to do. And it was, if you know my wife, it was actually quite adorable and it wasn't scary by any means. They weren't going to do anything, but she was terrified in the moment. And it was, I think that was the day I decided to marry her. So, yeah.
So it all worked out.
Yeah, it all worked out pretty good. Josh, when does this sort of fur seal thing kind of die down? That's sort of like late January, I would say, mid-December until latest January.
Yeah. Once the females have finished having their pups, by early February, even end of January, sometimes beaches can be a bit quieter.
Right. And
definitely
a little more relaxed.
Into February and March. Yeah,
and it's not every beach.
Not relaxed everywhere, but generally it's much more relaxed. In the key places, it's generally more relaxed.
Yeah, and it's not every beach. There are beaches that are worse than others. But that would be something that I would say I wouldn't use that as an excuse to deter anybody from booking in South Georgia at this time, because it might happen once. It's more of like hey, we just want to manage an expectation that if you're going to go this time of year, maybe expect to have one landing canceled due to heavily densely populated fur seals. So that would be why we're talking about this. It's just to kind of give some preparation, not to deter you from going. What else do we kind of see? Oh, yeah. The other thing that we see a lot of too is when do the birthings happening of these fur seals, the fur seal pups?
I mean, most of the births are happening right at the end of November and into early December. So that kind of early December window is when you see lots of pups being born.
And I don't think people understand that if you go during this time of year, you have a 95% chance of seeing a birthing happening right there on the beach.
Yeah. I mean, the beaches are so densely packed that it's quite common.
One other thing that's sort of, it's a little, I don't want to say the word grotesque because it's nature, but you will see the seabirds, the giant petrels and stuff, way more active. They're eating the placentas and they're eating the stillborns, which unfortunately happens from time to time. If you're a birder, it's another great opportunity to get some more authentic metal. I was going to say nature is a more authentic feeding
some nice
behavior.
Splashes of red in your photographs. Yeah.
And if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, this might not be the best time for you. So
no, maybe not.
No, it's not terrible. It's just they're eating the placentas and stuff like that. So the beaches will be covered with giant petrels and other types of birds of prey. Landing sites, I don't think that, it's not like Antarctica where there's like an accessibility of landing sites due to ice or anything like that. It's not like they open up or anything. There's not a sea ice concern that we see in South Georgia. Maybe Dragovsky Fjord opens up, which is a beautiful place to go for a cruise. That might be a little bit of a later season type stuff. But other than that, the hiking trails, all that stuff, it's pretty much accessible all year round. I would say that if your ship is going to do the Shackleton Trek still open, right?
Yeah, one thing I would say is early season if you've had snowfall. I mean, snowfall can happen at any time, but I've done hikes in October which have been waist deep snow, which is not great fun with 40 people behind you sometimes. But yeah, the Shackleton hike is open all year round. But then you mentioned the fur seals. The fur seals, if they're so dense on the beaches, sometimes at the end of the hike or the start of the hike, that can be a problem. I would say December, January.
For hikers, I would not necessarily do October. I have seen people close the Shackleton Trek due to the snow. But if you want to do something like Myvikin, things like this, I think that those are all good. Just maybe late November, early December, you start to see a little more opening of the longer hikes out to the waterfall, going deeper into Fortuna Bay. the hike from Fortuna to Stromness, stuff like that. So hikers maybe want to go a little bit mid-season or later season, I would say. Other than that, it's like I said, December, January, February, there's not a huge major difference between those times a year. Is there really anything else you want to touch with on that time frame that you think is worth mentioning? Other than prices will be a little bit high. It'll be a little more densely populated. When you start looking at trips that are around like January, that's when you do start to see some of those epic trips, they call them. The South Georgia, Falklands, Antarctica, and the circle crossing trips. You won't start seeing those until about January, because we talked about when we can cross the circle, when we can't. Sea conditions going through the Scotia Sea, Southern Ocean, any major differences, anything noticeable? What about the weather patterns that we see in South Georgia? Is one time a year worse than another? I do think that maybe earlier season in South Georgia is a little bit more susceptible to systems, but it could be any time of year.
Yeah. I mean, it could be any time of year, really. This last season we had some terrible weather, but then in early season, but then the season before it was flat calm. So it seems pretty changeable,
unpredictable.
Yeah. And then we slide into the end of the season, which is just the early March trips, or late February, early March trips, going into these very rare April trips, which we'll talk about. That's the one that you guys were on, but big highlight for me this time of year. We hate on the fur seals, but we love on the fur seal pups. Nikki, tell me a little bit.
So cute. I love them so much. But they also are kind of demons a little bit, because the trip that we just did, there were several that came for me. There were several that came directly at me. And I actually wound up using my selfie stick to just as a javelin thing as well. The first landing that we did, we all went on a hike. And as I was going up, there was a fur seal pup that came out of the tussock grass and ran after me. And I did the thing where I put my hand up and backed away, but it just kept lunging at me. And I, in a moment of panic, just started yelling, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" I was just backed into a corner by this tiny, adorable demon. And it all worked out in the end. I didn't get murdered. But they're very cute.
I often refer to them as little chihuahuas.
Oh my God. Yep.
Because they are so cute, and then they will turn on you on a dime. I want to see if this works, but I have a video of a recording of a baby fur seal, and it is nothing like anybody would ever expect. You think it'd be like a meh. This is a baby fur seal.
Oh my God.
And he's so cute.
Oh my Lord.
So you're, like Nikki says, you're walking through the tussock grass, and if you don't know what tussock grass is, it's like this big hair grass. It can be like a meter tall, and it's so thick and it's densely packed in that it creates cover for these seals. And you'll just be walking, and then you'll hear that noise, and you think it's this gigantic fur seal about to lunge out at you, and then this little chihuahua just comes running out at you, looking like it wants to nip your ankles. They're not that bad. They're harmless. They're adorable, and I love them. The best thing I've ever seen in my entire life is when you're at one of the places that has a low tide pool or something, and they are all just in there learning how to swim. And there's groups of hundreds of them all just rolling around and flipping their flippers and just having the day of their lives. They're very adorable. And we start to see them. That's like a February, March kind of thing. They're weaned off their mothers and stuff like that. So big highlight for wildlife photographers, I would say.
Yeah, like February, March time's great with the big groups of fur seal pups around. And then sometimes you get the odd blonde fur seal pup mixed in with them, which is always fun to see.
Yeah, and people think they're albino. They're not. They are leucistic.
Leucistic,
So,
yes.
Yeah, so I would say you see a handful of them every trip, maybe 4 or 5 of them. They're quite adorable. So I would say that for sure, if you're into wildlife photography, if you're into even landscape photography, and you want to get some of those golden hour photos, you then want to maybe slide back into this like February, March period. You're losing out on the elephant seals, but you're picking up the baby fur seals, which are really quite adorable. And again, this is sort of considered the shoulder season, and you're going to start finding better deals this time of year. Josh, is there anything sort of about this time of year that stands out to you versus the rest of the year?
Yeah, apart from the massive fur seal pups, you can sometimes see a bit more whales around at this time, but
yeah, good point. Good point. We did talk about good point.
It's so variable that you might get big aggregations. Early season, you had huge aggregations of humpback whales in November of this season, hundreds and hundreds of humpback whales, but that's very unusual. But later in the season, so often a good time to see some of the bigger whales around South Georgia, especially kind of getting into, it's rare, but you might be lucky to get a blue whale or fin whales, or sometimes there's a few more around, especially southern right whales at this later stage. Nikki, we saw some in April, in this trip that's just gone. So there's a few around.
That was a great reminder, because I remember my best fin wheel aggregation was around that time of year at Shag Rocks on the crossing between the two. That was actually quite spectacular. What about the Falklands? Do you see when do we start seeing the albatross chicks, the southern rockhopper chicks? When do we start seeing some of that stuff in the Falkland Islands?
So Gen 2s usually hatch around the kind of early November, usually. And rockhoppers are hatching kind of end of November. And then the black-browed albatross are usually, hatching in December. And they don't leave until, the chicks don't leave until end of April into May sometimes. So those end of season trips, you're still going to get lots of albatross chicks. But the penguins disappear, especially the rockhoppers, mid-February. They disappear completely almost from a lot of the sites. They go away to molt and to go to sea and fatten up. So sometimes in February you'll see really empty colonies of penguins, but you get different things. You get the albatross chicks, and then you usually get more whales. There's a lot of whales around the Falklands usually. From kind of New Year time, you get a lot of sei whales, southern right whales as you get closer to winter.
And dolphin. Let's not forget about the dolphin, right?
Yeah, dolphins, really
dolphins.
Good dolphins.
Yeah, right around Stanley. Right around Saunders. I can't remember the last time I was coming in and out of Stanley, because a lot of times the ship will either pull up to the pier alongside in Stanley, or you'll do a shuttle with Zodiacs back and forth. And it's really common to the point, I don't remember the last time I did a Zodiac shuttle to and from the ship to Stanley and didn't have Commersons swimming with the Zodiacs. They're always there. It's really nice. And
it's a little highlight.
How are the Falklands late in the season? What do you got? Or let's just say Stanley, visiting Stanley, it's a bit quieter. You will have, Richard will have run out of gin by then usually, but I think he's catching up to, So there's a gin distillery right there at the pier, and his name is Richard. He harvests all of the botanicals that go into the gin right there on the Falkland Islands, except for the juniper. I think he brings in the juniper, but then he's got that kelper. And what we were talking about in the early part of the show, this kelper gin that Richard makes is he goes down and he harvests the kelp itself, and it adds this very nice peppery flavor to the gin. He's just the nicest man, and you got to stop in. He's got a little tiny distillery, and he's right there in Stanley. But by the end of the season, he's usually out of it. So if you're a gin aficionado, I would plan my entire trip solely around the gin. Things are kind of quiet in Stanley toward the end of the season. It's sort of mellowed down.
I usually find the weather's pretty much more stable at the end of the summer season, getting February into March a little bit. Sometimes a little less wind, which is always a good thing, a little less wind in the Falklands.
It's worth mentioning that the Falklands are very susceptible to cancellations. And when Nikki actually never made it to Stanley because she had a windy day in Stanley, that's very common. Some of the other spots that we go to, the winds are very, very prevalent there in the Falklands. You're lucky if you get one full day in the Falklands, and never be disappointed if you don't, because that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. Yeah, you get if you have such short time windows, which obviously you do if you're going to Falklands, South Georgia, and Antarctica. You only have 2 days max in the Falklands. Yeah, weather can play a big part.
And there are trips that will either skip the Falklands, or what you guys were just on were these late season repositioning trips where you're leaving Ushuaia and you're going to the Falklands, you're going to South Georgia, and then you're heading up to Cape Verde, Tristan da Cunha, stuff like that. These are trips that are very late in the season. Your trip left April 3rd, April 2nd?
April
around
1st.
There? April 1st.
April 1st.
Yep.
Yeah.
April Fools.
It was a good one.
It was a pretty solid joke.
So we shouldn't laugh about it. We should. When do you start seeing eggs on feet in South Georgia? That's a really big highlight for some birder people, and they're not sure that they're not always expecting it. When do you start seeing eggs on feet?
You can see it earlier in the season. Because kings have that double kind of breeding cycle. Yeah, where you can have kings having eggs in January right up until April. We saw a few from a distance. It depends what sites you go to and how close you can kind of get to look. But yeah, any time from the new year you can get eggs on feet, which is always pretty cool to see, or small chicks on feet.
And we talked about it in the South Georgia episode, but we'll reiterate it here for anybody who might have missed it. We can see penguin chicks in South Georgia throughout the entire season because of this double breeding cycle that Josh is mentioning. It's every 16 months, 18 months. So there's always going to be penguin chicks. And I will say it out loud that I think they're the least attractive of the penguin chicks, but they're funny. They're funny. They're big and they're funny.
I should really show you on my wall behind me.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely king penguin chicks. Obviously doesn't come across in a podcast very well, but
but basically it just reminds me of the penguin from Batman when he's got that big giant coat. He's like short and chunky. Yeah. It's Danny DeVito in a penguin suit is what it is. And I think that sort of wraps up just kind of covering what time of year in South Georgia people might want to visit and what the differences are. It's really not rocket science. And like we mentioned in the beginning episode, you can't go at the wrong time of year. If you have the flexibility to go when you want to go based on budget, time off from work, and you can choose, you might want to lean towards something that's more favored in your interests. This is sort of going to contradict what we said about there is no best time to go. But I think if you were to ask any expedition guide or anybody who's been to South Georgia multiple times, the majority of them are all going to lean toward the early part of the season, very first week in November. Last week in October, first week in November. Josh, I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if I get to choose my trips, then I'm always trying for those early season ones, especially with the albatross coming into nest. That's always a highlight. That's a personal preference, but yeah, with those elephant seals and on the beaches.
And for the most part, we as guides, if you're a senior guide, you've been doing this for a long time too. You do get to pick your seasons, and I'm the exact same as you. I always take the early part of the season for South Georgia trips to go that time of year. I love the elephant seals. I think they're a huge highlight. You mentioned the albatrosses. You can always see penguin chicks, more accessible landing site because of the snow melt, a little bit of dusting, up in the mountains, which is actually really spectacular. And I think that all of that outweighs the one thing that you're really giving up on the Antarctica departures, which are the penguin chicks. And the penguin chicks are absolutely adorable. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. But if I had to choose between the two, I would lean towards that. It's the same when people ask us, would you rather go to South Georgia? Would you rather cross the circle? I mean, hands down. It's to South Georgia
South Georgia, yeah, absolutely.
All the way. It's not even. So I would say you could save some money. You can see quite a bit more wildlife. You don't have to deal with the pressure of the fur seals early in the season. You are going to miss out on fur seal pups. We will say that those are also adorable and a huge highlight. But that early part of the season really is where I think a lot of competition for the guides to get those voyages comes into play too. So that should mean something to a degree. So is there a best time to go? No. Is there a best time to go that a guide would say? Then maybe. I think it's just I don't think there's a bad time to go. And if you're booked to go on December, January, or February around there, you're not going to be disappointed at all. It's actually amazing that time of year as well. I think everybody's settled in. One thing we didn't talk about, the molt. The molting is something that we do need to kind of consider. When do we see that big king penguin molt taking place?
Yeah, kind of around the end of the year, generally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of penguins at different stages, usually kings, but yeah, big chunk of them molting, especially along those like big rivers at St. Andrews and places like that.
And that's just, the molt is just, we need to give extra space to the penguins that are molting because they're extremely stressed out. It's a very difficult time for them. It's normal process where they're shedding all of their old feathers so that they can come in, bring in a new set of feathers. But during that molting stage, they can't go out and feed because they can't get wet. So it's a little stressful. So that period is it's by no means is it like a bad time to go. You just have to give extra space by regulations. You have to give them more room, and they usually molt in huddles. So that would be sort of the only major thing to think about too at the end of the season. So I think that we sort of covered everything that I can think of. Do you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to throw in there, Josh?
I think we covered.
Yeah, just go to South Georgia.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. If you have a choice, then I would go to South Georgia every time. I'm very lucky that I used to do trips just to the Falklands and South Georgia. And I used to do 2 of them every season, one in October, one in March every year. The company stopped doing them now, but they were incredible trips. I know it's not Antarctica, that's the one, but everybody that comes on those Falklands, South Georgia, Antarctica trips, when you get back to the dock after the trip, they're like, man, we loved the Falklands and we loved South Georgia. Oh, and Antarctica was great too. So
we get people who ask us all the time if it's worth skipping the Falklands, and I say, hey, look, that's completely up to you, but I think it's so underrated, and it's really, especially for wildlife. I mean, we mentioned West Point earlier. You can't get any closer to birds or penguins than you can in West Point, right? It's just in their volume and their density.
If you want that, I know, like, with all the regulations that we have to abide by in Antarctica and South Georgia, all the IARDO regulations, which is for the good of the animals that you're seeing, those don't apply in the Falklands. You have local regulations, but it means you can lie down. You can go to a penguin colony and you can lie on the floor and you can take photographs, and there's a differing sense of freedom in the Falklands, which is very rare, I think, in a lot of places these days. Everything is very regulated. It's still regulated, but in the Falklands, you really do feel like you are alone with nature, and no one's going to tell you off for, lying down and or maybe just wandering 20 meters over to one side so you can take some pictures from a different angle or something. It's very nice. I find it very relaxing. Obviously, it's my home, but it's a very relaxing spot to guide in, and a very relaxing spot to travel in, I think.
I would say that I would hear more than anything else on those trips that the people who went into the Falklands with zero expectations came out extremely impressed and fulfilled with those trips, especially for the reasons you're talking about. I think that kind of wraps up this episode. We kind of covered everything, and I really appreciate, Josh, you taking the time to do this. I know it's a little late for you in the afternoon. You're in England, but you are in quarantine, so I don't know what else you'd be doing right now. No offense. So,
not too much. Not too much.
Got to make light of this situation. Nikki, how are you? Great.
Yep.
What day are we at? What date? What's the count?
Today's day 12. Have I shown you the calendar that I've made on my wall? I look like a prisoner. So I have it all written down.
Oh.
And every day I cross off one of the days. I'm
really glad we got to do this. I appreciate it. I know Josh, it's late for you over in England. It was a wonderful insights that you provided, especially being a local over there in the Falklands. Nikki, always great to get in and do an episode with you. We did have another episode scheduled, but we had some connectivity issues, but that'll hopefully be our next episode. We're looking to do something about the ship size. If you are interested in visiting South Georgia, please do reach out to us. You can visit our websites, letsgopolar.com. You can send us an email, info@letsgopolar.com. And if you have any comments or feedback about the show, you can always leave us a little bit of feedback. We also have an email address there. It's info@thedrakeshake.com. We've received a lot of feedback lately. We really appreciate all the compliments. We appreciate all the feedback. It's been really great to engage with everybody who's been listening to the show. And don't forget to join the Facebook group, Antarctica Travel Group. It's the largest polar community on the web. Once again, I want to thank our guest, Josh. Josh, I hope to have you back on the show. You were wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And Nikki, I'll see you in the next one, right?
Yes, sir. I'll be here.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. My name is Neil Drake, and that was The Shake.
If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe. Every week, we discuss a new topic in depth. And if you have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, feel free to drop us a line at info@thedrakeshake.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.